Check 1, 2. Morning. I'd like to call the September 10th Kankakee County Board meeting to order. Today's invocation will be from Todd Seroy, County Board Member, Vice Chairman.
Before we pray, I would like to ask for a moment of silence as we remember the victims of September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for your many blessings you have bestowed upon us. Continue to guide us with your wisdom and grace. Be with those who are uncertain and afraid, and those without shelter and nourishment. Be with our military and their families as they fight to ensure our freedoms. Keep us on the path of obedience to your word and your will. Remove away our complaining spirit. Close our fault-finding eyes. Help us to balance compassion and firmness. Give us the skill to mix wisdom with our words. Transform our perspective from being critical to becoming cheerful. Give us the vision to realize blessings that we have in our lives. And Father, protect our first responders and police as they risk their lives to save others. Father, please share your grace upon this meeting today. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty, could I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Washington.
Present.
Mr. Lejas. Mr. Olthoff. Mr. Hess.
Present.
Mr. Tholen.
Present.
Mrs. Polk. Mr. Snipes.
Present.
Mr. Byrne.
Present.
Mr. Seroy.
Present.
Mr. Lear.
Present.
Mrs. Weber.
Present.
Mrs. Peters.
Present.
Mr. Payton.
Present.
Mrs. Parker.
Present.
Ms. Dunbar.
Present.
Mr. Ritter. Mr. Kinzinger.
Present.
Mr. Fairfield.
Present.
Mr. Zenz. Ms. Haas.
Present.
Mr. Carrico.
Present.
Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Smith.
Present.
Mr. Swanson.
Present.
Ms. Zakulo. Mr. Featherling.
Present.
Mr. Dunhill. Mr. Wheeler.
Present. We have a quorum. Before we go into public commentary, just want to remind everybody that we are eager and happy to hear all comments regarding today's business or any other business. But just as a reminder, today's vote is not on closing a shelter or closing animal control or firing animal control officers. I just want to make sure that's perfectly clear. That's not any action before the county board or now or in the planned future. So first we have, and we also have 15 minutes. Total time. So I want to make sure that's for everybody. So if you have a comment, and please take into consideration the other people who want to speak. First is Dave Merkel from Bourbonnais. Back here at the mic, Dave.
Good morning, ladies. Is this on?
Yes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Merkel, and I used to fill one of those seats for about 10 years. Basically, and it was like 20 years ago when I helped reorganize animal control. And basically what I'm here for today is just kind of reiterate 20 years ago to speak for those who have no voice, at least cannot hear or understand you. And just for a moment, imagine that all of us county board members were on an official gathering or outing, and we were not in America, but we were in China, and we just got out of a fine dinner. Maybe some of us had a little bit too much sake, but when we walked out to find out how to get back to our location, the way home, we noticed that we couldn't speak Chinese, we couldn't make a phone call, and we couldn't get a taxi. This is kind of the same way it happened with every cat, dog, and animal in our county. So basically, we got a hold of the guy that was the animal control officer of the United States, the top guy. He was in Vermilion County in Danville. He came up here, and these little key tags, there was $180,000 worth of key tag revenue that was falling through the cracks because animal control did not have a department of its own. So what we did, we got him up here, and my pet project was to investigate why there was 50,000 cats and dogs that were euthanized prior to me coming on the board. So we sat down, we did our homework, we put up a plan, we made a blueprint, we assessed what was going on. Some of the county board members are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of you were on the board then anyway. But we can remember how much time we spent to organize the control. The fees updated the situation. The situation was deplorable at best. We were able to put this money into a fund that required, and there was $185,000 that was falling through the cracks. That was 20 years ago. As of this year, or the last year's closing, there was like $389,000 working on the budget that came basically from no taxpayers' money at all. This is all funded by the people that own pets in Kankakee County. So basically what I'm doing here is trying to explain a little bit on what's going on, how it's happened, and they were also able to buy 2 vehicles, trucks that they're using. We have 7 employees, and I'm finding it's the personal responsibility of the people, and basically there's enough, I think, going on with here to keep this running smoothly. And like I said, I saw a social media thing, so that's why I'm here, probably to come back and say that these key tags, these dog tags, are what funds the whole program. There's not a taxpayer dime that goes to taking care of animal control. So I'm going to cut this short from what I wanted to say, but I've adopted 3 animals out of animal control, and they've been nothing but happy. They've given love, they've received love. And another thing I'd like to say too is, I don't know how many of you people have adopted one, or how many people go out there and watch what they do on a regular basis, because what they have to do and go through, it just break your heart. So I'm here to help with anything I can know or do or help you guys on. But they've also collected about $500,000 on the goal to get a foundation or a building set up so it stands by itself and it runs by itself and it's funded by itself. So all I can say is the love you can get from animals is unconditional, and thank you all very much.
Next is Julie Boudreau from Bourbonnais.
Good morning. Thank you all for coming today. Appreciate the opportunity to let me speak. Ultimately, my career has been a dedication to serving the residents and animals in Kankakee County. I've been working towards a goal that I thought was a shared vision for the future of our county. The last 2 weeks have been a maelstrom of misinformation perpetuated by lack of planning and poor communication. It also shows a deviation from the work put in motion by this board over 20 years ago, as mentioned by David Merkel. In an effort to present information with complete transparency, I would like to speak about my dedication as a civil servant in this community and the measurable work we have done as a self-sufficient department of the county. One of the most notable accomplishments of my time as a director is the increase to the KCAC budget. In 2001, our revenue was $185,425 compared to the 2018 revenue of $389,825, a 210% increase. My department was able to do this while improving public safety through the ethical enforcement of the Illinois Animal Control Act. Without prompting from the board, I saw an opportunity to reduce our liability in adoptions while increasing our number of animals rescued. That's the goal, live animals out the door. Animals transferred from our shelter to other agencies has increased from over 37% during my time here, and adoptions, while we've decided to not take away from the opportunity for the private organizations, we've decreased those by 70%, but not saying that there's still not live animals going out the door. In accordance with the direction I was given at the start of my career in animal control to save for a new shelter, I have increased the balance of the IPTIP savings account from $87,963 in 2002 to $259,874 in 2019. This is an increase of 259%. It is even more substantial when you take into account that we were able to purchase 2 vehicles outright for our department in 2016 without having to do any financing for that. The absence of performance documentation indicating a gap in fulfilling my job's core roles leads me to believe the vote to remove me today rests on the review of my dedication as a civil servant. In defense of more than 20 years of dedication to animal welfare in the county, I'd like to present an example, personal example of my dedication. That was in 2007. My father passed away. There was a meeting scheduled with state officials to discuss property opportunities for a new shelter. Unfortunately, this landed on the same day as my father's funeral. In an effort to meet obligations of my job, my family, who supported my work, my father along with that, delayed his services so that I could attend the meeting that I needed to attend. And they were there for me and supported me in that way. This decision affects my family greatly. It's evident by the fact that my 2 children drove 16 hours through the night to be here with me today. They drove from Austin, Texas to be here to support their mom. When I started this job, they were 9 and 12. They spent countless weekends helping me clean that shelter and helping me change things around. If I truly do not have the experience necessary to assist with the transaction of changing the landscape of KCAC's presence in this county, I ask the board to recognize the years of hard work and dedication I have put toward the shared vision for our county. I ask that I am not penalized for banking my sick and personal time for 19 years, and that my extended illness be paid out at the end of my time in 12/1, if that is the decision of the board. Thank you for your time.
Next is Jody Etienne, if I pronounce that correctly, from Bonfield.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay. I don't know how to use these things. Closer? Okay. My name's Jody Etienne. I am a 30-year resident of Kankakee County. I'm a small business owner in this community and a big supporter of animal welfare causes and rescues in our community. In the past 14 years that I've been involved in the pet industry, I have become acquainted with many local people who rescue animals of all kinds. While everyone may not always agree on all aspects of animal care and control, one thing is certain: all these people have big hearts, and they want what's best for the animals. I feel that rushing into this decision is not in the best interest of the animals or the people or the taxpayers of Kankakee County. We shouldn't just transfer the management of animal control without a lot of thought. I'm not convinced it's best for the animals or the people. Chairman Wheeler has stated that this county needs to concentrate on enforcement of the laws regarding animals and to move out of the business of housing the animals. He stated on social media that putting animal control under the direction of the sheriff is phase 1 of his plan. And after that is a done deal, then the other details will all be worked out. Why are we jumping into this without a lot of thought? We don't know the costs or the obstacles that may lie ahead. Do you buy a car without taking a test ride, without looking under the hood, without kicking the tires, without getting any details of the sale in writing? Who has studied this thoroughly? Who has all the facts and figures to show us? Chairman Wheeler even said that his plan could cost the taxpayers more in the long run. He doesn't know. He cites Will County as a model for his plan. Has anyone from the board here actually taken a trip to Will County and seen in person how this works for them? Do we know what's going to happen here in our county as a result of that. There are 102 counties in Illinois. The model of the sheriff's department running animal control is not the majority. Most of those that have the sheriff running the animal control department have far more residents and more existing privately funded animal shelters than we have here in Kankakee County. Our animal control department is funded through the tag sales and fines. Under the current management, they have financial stability and a substantial amount of money set aside that is put there for the purpose of improvement and for building a new shelter. A large amount of money toward building the new shelter has also been raised by BARC. In 2015, the county board approved the purchase of land to build a new shelter. What's going to happen to all that? Will our animals be the biggest losers here? Who knows? Rather than voting on the management issue today and making this a done deal, let's do some homework first. We have a county animal welfare committee. Let them help you, the board, do some research, crunch the numbers, and visit other places that operate on this model. Form a legitimate plan and include animal control management and the local shelters in the planning. After that real plan is made, then decide what you want to do about the management. Making a decision that eliminates the director of the operations within animal control needs to be an informed decision. Get all the facts. Choosing to proceed full steam ahead to transfer animal control immediately to the sheriff's department without a concrete plan is not in the best interest of the animals or of the taxpayers of this county.
Next is Walter Schneider from Birchwood Lane.
Aroma Park. Good morning, board, and Mr. Wheeler. My name is Walter Schneider. I'm from Aroma Park. I've just got a couple of comments, and then I've got a question, and I don't anticipate an answer to it. But I'd say, is this working? Yeah. You know, wow, talk about a career-changing boo-boo. That's a whopper, dude. That is a whopper. You know, the organizational leadership skills, weak at best. Talk about absolute insensitivity. Reading that your job is in jeopardy in the newspaper, that doesn't get much lower than that. And I have a lot of experience with organizational change and change management and helping people through that curve. You gonna laugh at me? You're so.
Continue the personal attacks. Go ahead. That's fine. I'm here. I don't have to like it.
No, I'm just talking about the way you conducted business. It's not a personal attack. But, you know, just if I can offer a little bit of advice, you want to know how to successfully lead change management? You tap into people's passion. Look, you tapped into these people's passion, and I think most of them vote. But the question that I have for you, as quoted in the newspaper, the secret meetings that you conducted, how many? Thank you.
Roy Bernard from Kankakee. Before we do that, is there a motion to extend public comment by 5 minutes? Mr. Snipes, second by Ms. Dunbar. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Two opposed. Motion carries.
Good morning. I consider myself to be an advocate for animals. I, like many here in this audience and many of the county board members, have many questions about the county's attempt to have the animal control department become part of the sheriff's department. One of my biggest concerns is the animal control fund. My wife, Ann Bernard, as a county board member, made sure that the funds for animal control were separate from those of the other county funds. Animal control is self-supporting. The fees for microchipping and rabies tags pay for animal control operations. In addition, animal control funds have been used to buy property on US 45. That was supposed to be for a new facility. In fact, there's a barn there, I understand. It shelters horses there. What do you plan to do with that property? Some board members have said that the county plans to sell the land and put the money in the general fund or in the sheriff's department. Again, you should not be commingling animal control funds with other departments. The argument for the Sheriff's Department control is that you can have animal control officers be available 24 hours a day. You could do that now. And will there be deputies carrying weapons? Will these animal officers be carrying weapons? Will dogs or cats be running at large, be shot to save time, chasing them all over town? Your intentions may be honorable, but you will not be county board members, chairman, or sheriff forever. Others in the future may not have the same noble ideas that you have, and you must think about the long-term ramifications of your decision. You say the sheriff will approve a new administrator. You will have more animal control officers, so there really is no cost savings. In fact, you'll probably be spending more than you are right now. And just to say one thing about the administrator, she decides the life and death of living creatures every day. No one else here has to face that decision. Will these animal control officers deal with dog fighting and abuse cases, or is that going to be the responsibility of the deputies? Will there be open records for the media and public on euthanasia and placement of animals into shelters? Can the shelters actually handle all these additional animals? What about dog bite cases or dogs running at large? Where will they be kept for observation? The shelters? Will the sheriff attend community service committee meetings, or will all this be in the criminal justice committee? What will be the role of the Animal Welfare Advisory Committee? The chairman created this committee, but did not share this idea to them. If you want to follow the model of other counties, try instituting programs for low-cost spay-neutering and trap, neuter, vaccinate, release for cats. Other communities have shown tremendous success with these programs to reduce stray cat and dog populations. Why not here? Maybe we can end the cycle of the overpopulation of kitten season. By the way, animal control receives state money for the Pet Overpopulation Fund. This would be a perfect use. Presently, you have an adoption coordinator bringing in $150 for each adopted animal. How much revenue is coming from adoptions? If you don't know, you need to find out. Also, who will administer microchipping and rabies tags? Is all that going to be done at the Sheriff's Department? Also, so numerous questions remain, but your position so far is that we can answer them after the Sheriff Department takes over. You know, government says it wants to run like a business. Well, in business, you need to have a written plan. Without a written plan, you would be laughed out of the room. You first need to have a written plan. How about getting animal control under control first, then study what it will take for the sheriff to take over operations? Just because other counties do something doesn't mean it is the right choice or the better choice. The right choice, the better choice, is to table this resolution until you have the right answers. Thank you.
Next is Sarah Van Lunt from Kankakee. Sarah Van Lunt. Hope I pronounced that correctly. Sorry.
So I am here just to remind people of an incident that I had with animal control May of 2018. Animal control took a puppy. It was a found puppy from me that I had taken to the vet to get scanned for a microchip, and I was notifying them that I had it. I didn't intend to steal it from an owner if it had run away. And as it turns out, that I was not aware of the law of that time at that time, and I asked for documentation. Was this legal? Do I have to give you the puppy? All along they told me yes, and that's not true. So under the current direction that they have broken laws. Mine's not the only case. And I really feel like if animal control under their current direction was doing an amazing job, this wouldn't be up for vote. If it was something that was going well already, the laws that we have in place that should be followed. I mean, if you want to change a law, but don't just do what you want. So that's it. The puppy's fine. But they came to my house with the animal control van and brought the police. And as it turns out, they had no right to take the dog. So all that trauma and all that drama for something that wasn't appropriate to do in the first place. But of course I didn't know that, and I'm in the position that a lot of citizens are, that we have very vague understanding of the law, and that's their job to know, not necessarily our job to be able to understand every single thing. But I had to go searching, and they didn't provide it to me. I had to sort of beg for it, and even then it was read to me off of a phone while I was in tears with the police and animal control in my driveway. And again, they were not in the right, but that's under their current direction. Julie had many opportunities to speak to me about it, to not really resolve it, but to at least for us to come to an understanding, and she completely refused to do any of them. I mean, we even had people from the AWAC board that were willing to sit down and we could have lunch together and mediate, just so that it wasn't so one-to-one and uncomfortable, and none of that ever happened. And I do believe that it was her responsibility to reach out and to, you know, work with the public. I mean, that's why they're there, for our safety and for us in the county. And I don't feel like that's how it works right now. And I truly believe that a big part of it is the direction that we have right now. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We have, we're 2 minutes over. Is there a motion to extend for another 5 minutes? Mr. Washington, Mr. Eckhoff, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Dr. Ande Wegner.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to keep this short and sweet because I know there's a lot of people that still want to talk. I'm not a politician. I'm a taxpayer, just like you guys are. I'm also a public servant in a different means. I'm a veterinarian. I have lived in this county most of my life, and I've been serving this county in some form or another in regards to animals for more than half of my life. My request to you guys here today is to delay this decision until we can get more information. Conferring with experts in the field, such as veterinarians as myself or Dr. Gortowski. I am the veterinary advisor of AWAC. Dr. Gortowski is the veterinary liaison for animal control. With all due respect, I believe that we do have additional knowledge that we can provide with respect to public health, rabies situations, wild animal situations, so on and so forth. And I also feel that conferring further and getting public spread of knowledge of the shelter administrators in this community would be beneficial in proceeding with this decision. So again, I ask you guys to delay this decision until we can get additional information that would provide a more well-rounded outcome on this. Thank you.
I have Marcia Gortowski from St. Anne.
Thank you. As Ande said, I'm the veterinary administrator at Animal Control. I think that most of you, if you read my email, know how I feel. The decision to put animal control under the sheriff's department may be very reasonable and a feasible move, but I don't think that we have enough answers, and I'm not sure that a 2-month period to properly train a new administrator, if indeed December 1st is the last day of Julie's employment as the administrator, is enough time. There is a lot of little nuances to the law. There's a lot of information about recognizing animal abuse, dog fighting, proper control, care of pets, and also making decisions about live outcomes of any of the animals that come into animal control, which by Illinois law is the goal of animal control, is as many live outcomes as we can. So to vote today and say we're going to choose a new administrator, and in 2 months we're going to make them as knowledgeable as our present administrator, is a little frightening to me. I think that if we have more time, that maybe this is going to be the best decision. But I think, and I said this in my email a million times, a feasibility study is so important to make such a large decision. And all I'm asking is that we do have more information before voting today about putting animal control under the control of the sheriff's department without enough time for proper training and filling them in on how we even run animal control. So please just get more information, make sure this is really feasible. Do we have enough shelters in our community to help with getting live outcomes of the animals that are picked up by animal control? Are there enough or is there enough help out there to deal with quarantines and rabies testing? Just a slew of things that come to mind that it's overwhelming, and Julie tends to have a lot of information. So again, maybe more time, but not today. Thank you.
Finally, we have Eileen, I want to say Stuckmeyer, is that correct?
Yes.
Bourbonnais.
My name's Eileen Stuckmeyer, formerly Eileen Mantarian, used to be an animal control officer. I am going to agree with everyone so far that this at least needs to be delayed. I see you sitting up there rolling your eyes at some of the things that have been said, but everything has seemed so very fast, and you're surrounded at this point by people who have a lot of experience in the field, whether it's myself, who served as an animal control officer for 1.5 years and experienced a lot of different things in our county, all sorts, from good to bad. I was actually the officer that Sarah spoke of that came to her house that day. It, you know, is sad that the perception of that was there. However, you also have, as an officer, have to protect yourself. Director Boudreau is a marvelous leader. She is a wealth of knowledge and should be consulted on a change like this. While being umbrellaed under the sheriff's department could be a good idea, the manner in which it's being approached, I do not believe is beneficial. I do not believe is safe for the animals, for the people of our community, or for the 3 officers that currently work for animal control, 2 of whom are very new. Like I said, I was there for 1.5 years. Right now, you've got an officer with only 3 months of experience and one with even less. And the last thing I want to say, I made a note so I wouldn't forget, was that, as you stated in your prayer this morning, sir, that we are praying for a mixture of compassion and firmness, and to shift animal control from what it is now to more enforcement. You're going to lose that compassion. You're going to lose the ability to go and find a woman who has over 100 cats in her home and extend the kindness of saying, hey, I see you. I see that you have started with good intentions, and somewhere along the way, it got lost. To be able to, instead of enforcing and prosecuting that person, to be, hey, let me reach out to our partner shelters and see what we can do to pull 117 cats from that home. That will not be possible in the future. So to pray for that mixture of compassion and firmness, sir, that currently exists as animal control stands now, and that will get lost. That is my fear. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, I need a motion to go into executive session, discussion of employment and specific employees of the public body, 5 ILCS 120/2C1. Motion, Mr. Swanson, second. Mr. Featherling, that'll be a That's a roll call vote to go in.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Legess. Mr. Olthoff. Mr. Hess. Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk. Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne. Mr. Seroy. Mr. Lear. Mrs. Weber. Mrs. Peters. Mr. Payton. Mrs. Parker. Ms. Dunbar. Mr. Kinzinger. Mr. Fairfield. Ms. Haas. Mr. Carrico. Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Smith. Mr. Swanson. Mr. Featherling. Mr. Donnell. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Be going into executive session. Everyone needs to exit, please, except those parties that are germane to this conversation. Okay, we are back from executive session. Under the next item on the agenda is Executive Committee. If we could read the title into the record, please.
Authorizing the transition of the Kankakee County Animal Control Program and appointment of an administrator.
Sorry, one more time. I had the mic off.
Authorizing the transition of the Kankakee County Animal Control Program and appointment of an administrator.
Thank you. So at this point, we'll get into a discussion. I need a motion to approve to start with. Before we go in, that's Mrs. Weber, second. Mr. Fairfield. So before we go into the discussion, I wanted to alert the board members to the letters that are in the packet. We've all seen emails that have come in for non-support. We've seen a lot that are in support. I want to draw attention to the next few letters. This one is from the Humane Foundation. Their board voted, and they voted unanimously, from what I was told by them, and as quoting, after consideration, your proposal to move animal control under the county sheriff's department, the Kankakee County Humane Foundation would like to say we support this move. It would be a positive move for the county. We support your efforts in this matter. We look forward to working with the county and the shelter rescue community on what the future could look like. And this is echoed throughout. This is from River Valley Rescue. Mic in the hallway. Jason, is the mic in the hallway on? It is now? Okay, thank you. So we have another letter here from River Valley Rescue. These are the two largest shelters in the area, handle the most volume. Private shelters, should I say. After our meeting last week, a further communication with you and the other rescues, River Valley Animal Rescue is in agreement with your plan to turn over management of animal control to the county sheriff's department. And this, it's echoed. You see the full letter. AWAC board member Jamie Jamnick also has a letter as a member of AWAC. I want you to know you have my support. Another AWAC member, Christy Slaby, she wanted to let her board member and the board know that she is also in support. There's another letter in there from a recently exited board member, Laura Weber. She was a former director at the Humane Foundation, former BARC board member, and former AWAC member. She is also in agreement that this is a positive move, and they all look forward to working on the next phase, which is the county to partner with all of the animal and rescue community to really go into a deep dive of what they want this county to look like as far as animal control's involvement and the shelter community partnering on what our shared future is, and we've talked about that extensively. So that is, while that is an integral part of the plan, I want to draw attention to the fact that nobody is in the shelters or being in the animal control. This proposal doesn't include anybody, animal control officers, current staff, anybody being fired. There's no imminent plan to shut down the shelter. When I say, and we've said in the meetings that the county, I don't think we should be in the position of being in the shelter business. That doesn't mean somebody else won't be in that position. I thought that was kind of evident. Again, when I admitted poor communication, that was part of it. So when we talk about all of these things, I want you to know, and also what's not in here I received, it was from Dawn Tutt, who handles the wild animals. She is fully in support of that in the community. There are others. There was a vet who gave me a letter of support and said she didn't want to make it in the board members packet because a very prominent vet, she feared for the retribution that if this didn't pass. So I will tell you that that is a common thing that we hear throughout. So I will say that the shelter rescue community has stepped up, and the volunteers, and from what I am understanding, the board members, it was all unanimous to support this change, and they look forward to partnering with the county to figure out what the future is. So with that, I just wanted to lay the groundwork of this isn't just what we're asking for as a board. This is what the people who work every single day in the private side, this is what they are asking for as well, to be able to move on and to be able to have this change of direction. They look forward to the sheriff's department enforcing the laws and the training that they will provide to those animal control officers, and vice versa, by the way. So with that being said, I know the sheriff may have some things that he could answer regarding what he's been doing and looking into. Questions for me, questions for state's attorney, Anita, anybody, fire away, please. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, sir. In looking through your letters of support the one thing that I noted in here is under the River Valley Animal Rescue, we're full on any given day, as are the other shelters. My neighbor in particular stopped me in the middle of my hayfield, wanting to know where we were going to put.
Sorry, you got to go a little closer. So,
all right.
It's progress out in the street. It's drowning you out a little.
Yeah, right. As I was saying, your River Valley Animal Rescue letter points out what I'm hearing from the other shelters. They're full. What are we going to do with these critters that are picked up? My neighbor stopped me in my hayfield last week wanting to know where she should take somebody or an animal, because she called the Humane Society. They said no. She called a couple of these other shelters. They said no. If we close the center out here, and I know that's a transition period, up to a year, I have a couple questions on that. What do we do with these animals?
Well, first of all, we're not closing the center. Okay? That was a gross misinterpretation. I'm being kind by a few. If the county's not in the shelter business, maybe somebody else is. Maybe it's a partnership. Maybe it's whatever our future is, it's blue sky. Nothing's changing until everybody agrees that this is the path we want to go on together.
Okay.
So again, those are questions. I know that people would like to be able to predict what their future is, okay? And I would like to say that I could have all those answers, but we finally have everybody at the table to decide what we want to do together, what they've been asking for. So to that point, you can tell your constituents that the shelter's not closing. I mean, how could it? Where would all these animals go? There is no capacity. That's not even possible right now.
This is a point of contention then, because you're telling me on one side, we're looking at phasing the shelter out within a year.
No.
That's a misconception then?
It is. Gross, because if we're not running the shelter, could it possibly be somebody else is? Could it be that one of the rescues or the shelters has decided to take over those operations for us? Could it be that we decide that we're not going to change it all because it is the best model? But those are things that are not to be answered. What we're deciding here today is the sheriff going to manage animal control under the administration and focus his efforts on both learning from and educating those investigators as the manager of that operation, with nothing else changing except the fact that we're going to start meeting with all constituents in that community who blood, sweat, and tears are in it to figure out what that future looks like for all of us.
I can almost buy into that the way you're explaining it right now. My other concern is, and I don't know, $380-some thousand was raised through animal control. If this transition goes through, the other shelters then that take these animals, are they going to get the funds?
The other shelters aren't taking the animals. You were conflating to a possible future to what is happening right now. Our shelter will still operate and still run just like they are today. It's just under new management with a dedication to sound management practices.
With our funds.
Yeah, and by the way, to mention the money, those funds can't be commingled and intermingled with the sheriff's department. They are set aside for only those uses. So I've heard that as well. So I just want to mention the funds have to go for that activity.
So if I'm understanding it right, as of today, that shelter out there on Stafford Drive or whatever it is will remain open and will be open in the extended future.
Right. Yeah. It's
so the employees who are currently cleaning kennels and stuff like that are still going to be being paid through the rabies tags and all this other stuff?
Yes, that is still the way. The kennel is going to operate the way that it is right now, open. We're hopefully going to increase animal control officers. That's part of this, is to have more people out there to be able to. And frankly, I've told the sheriff that we need to, and I think he might agree, that we need a second shift as well, a 3 to 11, because right now the phone stops ringing or stops being answered at 4:30. So
I'm well aware of that.
Yeah, so we all know that has to change as well. So, but to your point, nothing changes until we all agree that it changes. And when I say we all, it's this room, it's AWAC, and it's the shelter community. Because if we're going to have something along the lines of a animal welfare summit with everybody at the table that are running these shelters, to talk about what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and where we'd like to be, that might take us a year. It might take us longer. We could have an idea in 6 months, but that doesn't mean a shelter is going to close. You know, the two got conflated. I couldn't lie to employees and say that that's not a possibility, but there is no immediate plans to close the shelter. And that has been a gross misrepresentation of what's been going on this whole time.
Thank you.
Yep. Next question, please. Mr. Snipes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would appeal to the consciousness of this county board to table this issue, and I will state my reasons for this. I think anything that's brought to us today to vote upon without having thoroughly researched and looked at the pros and cons either way would be a discredit to the integrity of this particular board. The paper said, and I don't know if it's true, that there was 15 CBMs that were contacted. That means county board members. 13 of us apparently wasn't. We cannot, in good conscience, move forward because, and this is where I have the problem, there's no evaluation. Then I come to find out there's really no written contract anywhere, but we put a person in a position, and it could be the potential in a court of being a contract, being that the person started in January of 2000, and anything ending before January 2nd could be implied as a contract. I'm just saying my reasons, because you put a person in a contractual position, whether you gave them a contract or not. It rolls over if you don't give them a certain number of days. So that means that we might be held onto a TIG in a federal court that we will probably have to have an employee that we just have to pay, even if you made this decision today. The other thing is, without an evaluation in place, and that's something that we have to do, the schools do it, business do it, you have it in place. And it has to be there whether you are an employee at will or a contractual employee is a guideline. That's something that has not been done. So I'm not comfortable with making a decision now. I was here on this board. I started in 1990. And I was here when Ann Bernard came on with the Animals' Right movement, and I supported it. I cannot in good conscience support what we're doing today. And I don't think any person with integrity can. So my thing is, unless I hear some other conversation going some other way that could convince me, I would make a motion that we table this issue until October the 8th, 1 month, till we can get and grasp and do a little bit of research. And if you don't want to table it, then, and call it for a vote, I'm going to have to vote no.
Is there anybody else that would like to comment? Ms. Dunbar. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the executive committee, I know I asked you about process, and I just have a follow-up question to that. It seems like if we're in a business community, if we're running the county as a business, we would develop a plan for the transition. We would identify budgetary issues and things like that. And I've heard a lot of maybes today. Maybe it's this, maybe it's going to change, maybe it'll do that. And that doesn't really seem like good planning, to vote and then figure it out rather than figure it out and then vote on an actual plan. So that's just a comment. My question is about communication and transparency, and I appreciated your comments on social media that, you know, the initial handling of this was probably, you know, it got blown up into a lot of miscommunication and misunderstanding. But
I just have a question about board documents, because I've never seen a board document released on Facebook before the board members got it. We received this resolution on 9/9 at 3:49. It was posted on Facebook at 9/6 at 5:13, and I just wondered if that is a new thing, that we're gonna see board documents released on Facebook first, or should we still expect to get them in our board packets earlier than they're released to the public? Because I had questions, I had people calling me and asking me questions about a document that I hadn't even seen, because I don't spend, you know, every day on Facebook. Thank you.
Interesting. So the planning of this, I can't even begin. The financial, if nothing's changing, then the finances stay the same. So I don't know how anything could change if the finances are, nothing's changing. I have the finance department and Anita running the numbers to see exactly what possible futures could cost or not cost, but immediately there is no, it's the same budget that will be there for next year. It just depends if we're going to allocate resources towards the administrator. Are we going to, I would prefer to see them go towards more animal control officers and have it be budget neutral at this point, but that's just my own opinion. There is a board to make those decisions. You know, the transparency thing, I don't know how much more transparent we can get than talk about something in an open meeting. Every board anywhere talks to county board members about individually about upcoming issues to get their input, especially ones that have expressed interest in particular subjects. In this case, it was the people who actually did work on the animal committee, people that have been here a while, that were here when this transition happened 20 years ago, that had particular insight, and then some county board members who may have issues within their areas where there's dog fighting and cockfighting and other things that they want to see actually taken care of. You know, as many people as want to get involved here, get involved. And so I talked to the people who had expressed an interest in this and to get their opinion. Is this a path that we want to go? I consulted with the sheriff. Is this a path that he wants to go? And he was very eager to do so. And he can speak to the amount of work that he has done talking to other counties. I believe he said 15 counties in Illinois do this. That was the last count. So this wasn't like, you know, whimsical. It was me talking to other board members, AWAC members, what's right, what's wrong, what's the problem? And it kept coming down to management and enforcement. And so that's why that came to an open meeting with everybody in the world to hear what we were talking about. Every board talks to board members, as long as they're not groups of board members, to see where they're at on something. Because I may not have all the answers. They may have something that they think should be, and actually things were, there was input put into that as we went through this. So I don't know if any of those board members have any comment, but it wasn't just me sitting here doing it alone. Or having secret meetings, which was implied, which is ridiculous. There are no secret meetings here. We do everything in the open. Before I got here, we didn't even broadcast meetings. So that's not towards you, that's just towards the comment, because that's not necessary. So a follow-up, please. Yeah.
If you could address my second question about the document being released on Facebook prior to the board receiving it.
Hey, once the agenda's out, and the document can be released at any time.
We did not receive it until the 9th at 5:13.
Okay, there's nothing illegal or improper about that at all.
So should we continue to monitor Facebook for our future agendas?
Yeah, and I can monitor Facebook to get your comments as well about county board business. It goes both ways.
Understood, but what about people who aren't on Facebook? We didn't get this agenda until the 9th.
You got the agenda went out.
I'm sorry, we did not get the resolution until the 9th. The
Right.
resolution was posted on Facebook on the 6th.
Exactly. I thought the public deserved to hear exactly what we were voting on. Because
And the county board members don't deserve to read what we're voting on beforehand?
Yeah, you got it beforehand.
We did not get it on the 6th.
You got it though. Is it that?
I didn't see it till yesterday,
Well, then
when it was emailed to my county email.
everybody got a chance to see this before the meeting. You're not being discriminated against. You're not being withheld. I know you're active on Facebook. I know you saw it. You can't tell me you didn't. Come on.
That is not the point, Chairman.
Mr. Lear?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at the resolution, there's one paragraph here that I'm sure has been thought through, but it's a little surprising to me, saying that the county board chairman will appoint the administrator with input, consent to the county board and input from the sheriff's department. If this administrator is under the authority of the sheriff, I get a little confused there.
The state law says it has to be appointed by the chairman with the advising consent of the board, just like the removal. So the sheriff would come with that recommendation to the board, and that would be what we would vote on. So again, we will vote on the next administrator if this passes.
All right, thank you, that clarifies it.
Any other questions? First time, Mr. Carrico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify here, I think you already answered some of the questions that I had, but I just want to make sure. I had a question which would have been in comparison between the animal control operation right now, the cost, and what will be under the sheriff's budget, but it seemed like you already answered that it will not change. The other thing here that I had was where exactly the animals will be housed after December 1st, and you also answered that will continue to be open and operating. Now, how will this transition will save county money?
I don't know that it will. That's not the point. We need to change management of animal control to solidify what we're trying to do here as a county. That's my opinion. That's why it was brought here. That's what the shelter community is asking us to do. That's what many board members are asking us to do, is to change direction on management. It's not a cost savings measure. It's really an efficiency and a management and really a professionalism issue, that I know there's good employees there. I know that they care. We want to give them the resources that they need.
So it's something that we're gonna actually reevaluate later on or see what's happening?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I'm not going to speak for the sheriff on how he's going to run the operation, but I know they know how to manage, and I know they know how to manage finances, you know, as far as the structure and reporting and all the things that need to be done. So I have confidence in that. I have confidence in chain of command. I have confidence in investigative techniques being passed down. I have confidence that the sheriff will be innovative, and that, you know, there may be things that he does out there to take some of the work burden off of them, whether it's, you know, some of the what do they call that? When people get good time out, you know, maybe it's some folks may be able to clean cages or, you know, do whatever. I mean, there is more involvement that can happen there. The future is blue sky, what happens there. But as far as professional management, that's what we're doing here, to moving it to law enforcement. Mr. Seroy?
Thank you.
Sorry, there you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Antonio's point, you know, over my head, you know, your starting salary of your new director might not be equivalent to the ending salary of a 20-year veteran director. So there might be some savings in the salary portion of it if we're going with a 1-year starting salary of a new director and, you know, extinguishing a 20-year salary.
Mm-hmm.
Might be some savings there. I'm not sure what the salary would be.
Distinguishing, but
distinguishing. Distinguishing.
It's nothing humorous about this. No. This is very difficult.
But that would be my thoughts on that comment that you made. You know, maybe that would be a portion that would be lower.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Washington.
I don't agree. I'll say it again. I don't agree. I believe that whomever the sheriff selects as an administrator is going to have the experience that is lacking and the abilities that may be lacking in this administrator that we have now, and that will come at a cost. So we're not talking about grabbing somebody off the street and then training that person up to the standard that we want them to be. They're going to have that standard when they come.
Mm-hmm. It's possible, yes, likely. Mr. Smith, is there anybody else first time? I want to make sure, Ms. Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Point of clarification, could you please explain and assure all of us that Animal Welfare Advisory Committee will be a large part in this transition?
I couldn't see how they couldn't be, and it's in the resolution that is part of, you know, the process.
Good.
And that was designed to be a clearinghouse of information and what the community wanted to see as far as what we're doing as a county board in terms of animal welfare.
Exactly.
We have heard loud and clear that they want enforcement. They want more enforcement. They want a second shift. They want us to work with the municipalities. I mean, we've tried for 20 years and it's just not working in this aspect. On all aspects, we have no relationships with the shelters, none.
Right.
And what we do have is not good relationships. So
And AWAC, and thank you for the clarification for everyone that doesn't understand the role that we play. But I appreciate it that we do have a group of professionals that serve on that committee, from veterinarians to shelter managers, so that the public will know that we are passionate about our position with animal welfare, and we will make sure, and if there's anything that we see, we will be the loudest to yell. We will make sure that animals come first. So I just want everyone to know that we do want enforcement. Those bad guys that mistreat animals should be punished.
any more first-time comments? All right, second, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, sir. I'm just curious if the sheriff is prepared to give us some background on what he's looked at for this transition, what his thoughts are.
Sure. Where's sheriff still here?
He's coming. He's in the hall. He's coming.
Alrighty, so what was the question again for this? Did you catch that in the hallway?
I did.
Okay.
Speakers work.
Good.
So basically, we have had some discussion with both the Illinois Sheriff's Association, a couple sheriffs who I'm very familiar with, one as close as Livingston County. So we have talked about a number of ideas and things that they are doing to continue, as Ms. Parker said, you know, the well-being and the care of the animals. You know, again, I'm not going to get into a specific thing today, but yeah, we have looked into it, and we are very, very confident that we can work with those presently employed in animal control and make it accommodating for our residents as well. Anything specific that you'd like to ask, Daryl?
Anything for the sheriff specifically? Mr. Snipes?
Sheriff, you said you can work with animal control and with the citizens of the community. Is this a, I don't want to say burden to the office or whatever, it's an added responsibility? We know, and my concern is with the limited number of deputies we have on the street already. I would rather see us work in areas to bring that up, but what's the consensus?
So I can tell you right now, Mr. Snipes, that in 2018 alone, the Sheriff's Office responded to 253 animal calls. And so far this year, as of about a week ago, it was we've responded to 193 animal calls. So we are out there responding as well when other people aren't available. So our office is very familiar with doing some of the things. Now, am I going to stand up here and tell you that I'm familiar with every bit of law that is out there? No, I'm not. But I can tell you that with the resources that we have, with the resources in animal control, that we would be able to handle virtually anything.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Mr. Byrne, did you have something?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, should we move forward in this transition, are we looking at expanded coverage, not just in hourly coverage during the day and night, but as well as within the county itself, as some areas of the county don't fall under the coverage of the county animal control? Like,
Yeah.
I live in the village of Bradley, and the village of Bradley does not have a contract. So as a
Right. Yeah.
I have had residents call me about it, and they're in support of what we're trying to do.
Well,
But
obviously,
the coverage, and obviously the coverage of, 24/7 coverage, the entire county.
and all those municipalities are in the county, so we would certainly work with them to come with some agreement that we can work together to take care of the animals. Okay.
That is the goal of this, is to focus on those relationships that already exist between our sheriff's department and the local municipalities. And that will be primary on getting those together. There are also other models out there that offsets the municipality's commitment on revenue. You know, finances have to direct towards it, and those things will be fully vetted by this group that is going to work together to see exactly what we want to do after the move. Yes, sir. All right, you're good.
I'm not sure if this is for you or the sheriff, but the mayor of Buckingham specifically asked, they have an existing contract with animal control. Are those contracts going to go away, or will they still be a first response priority as they see it?
Nothing's changing. Those contracts stay in effect.
Okay.
Yep. And those are still animal control officers that respond.
Correct.
Because they're not going anywhere either. Yes, Ms. Dunbar?
Thank you, Chairman. Sheriff, should this transition occur, would those animal control officers then become union employees since your staff is union? Have you looked at that yet?
Not at this point, because I think they would fall under a different classification, because our deputies are one classification, corrections another classification. I mean, obviously, in today's world, it's something that could happen, but not, they wouldn't fall automatically into one or the other.
Thank you.
Ms. Peters?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, a question for the sheriff. Will volunteers still be used?
16?
Is it on?
Yep.
Okay.
Will volunteers still be used, and could you see a reason that in the future that would be prohibited?
I don't see a reason that would be prohibited. But I do think that it's imperative that there are volunteers that are involved in, as there are in other shelters and things like that. So no, I don't think that would be prohibited.
Thank you.
Comments? Any questions for the sheriff? Anything else for me personally? Or any other, Anita, Jim Rowe, excuse me, our state's attorney? Mr. Snipes? I'll just leave it on. With the best intentions.
It is apparent, and we are only on number one. We have a whole agenda to get through. There's a lot of questions that have been asked. I'm going to, I don't know if there's a motion on the floor, but if there's not, want to make if there's one, and I want to amend that motion to table this until October 8th, because apparently there's a lot of questions that has been asked, and to make a decision now would be would be fundamentally unfair. So
there's a parliamentary procedure question here that we're talking about, because there is a motion on the floor. Can a motion to table be made after the motion has already been made on the floor?
It can be, right.
And that's a question, I'm gonna ask Mr. Lear first. I'm not gonna put you on, well, I am putting you on the spot, but you have a lot of experience in this matter from your academia. And if we would want to pause, I would look it up, because I definitely don't want to oh, sorry. So his intention is to make a motion to table after there's a motion to approve and second it on the floor.
And I couldn't respond on memory what was appropriate parliamentary procedure.
In discussing with the clerk, it would make sense that otherwise you wouldn't have a motion to table, because there wouldn't be a motion pending to table. So since there's been a motion to adopt and there was a second, it opened it up for discussion. There's now a motion to table that. So you should see if there's a second for the motion to table.
Okay. Motion, second, Ms. Peters. We'll do a voice vote on that. The motion is to, the motion is to table this for future discussion. Till
October the 8th.
October 8th.
8th, yes, and that.
At the time, sir.
So he asked for a roll call, so we will do a roll call on tabling this.
Mr. Washington. Aye. Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mr. Olthoff. No. Mr. Hess.
No.
Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk. Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Nay.
Mr. Seroy.
Nay.
Mr. Lear.
Nay.
Mrs. Weber.
Nay.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Nay.
Mrs. Parker.
Nay.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Nay.
Mr. Fairfield.
Nay.
Ms. Haas.
Nay.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Nay.
Mr. Smith.
Nay.
Mr. Swanson.
Nay.
Mr. Featherling.
Nay.
Mr. Donnell. Mr. Wheeler.
Nay.
Motion fails 7 to 18.
Motion fails 7 to 18. Back to the original motion to approve. We have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion on this? Mr. Eckhoff.
I would just like to make a comment that in the future that, since we're looking to go ahead and make changes, that we don't go ahead and charge municipalities to go ahead and, you know, have contracts with them, that we should go ahead and look at doing a tax or whatever, so everybody is a part of animal control.
Oh, okay, like
That's just,
slamming, if you will? Okay, yeah, I know what you're saying. Basically, that to make sure that they're invited in the community so they don't get a bill without actually being invited. Okay. All right, then, I guess, so would you like a roll call vote on this?
I'd like a roll call vote, yes.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Legess.
Point of order, clarify what the vote is.
The vote is to adopt the resolution as printed, and animal control program shelter will move to the sheriff's management, and he will be appointing a new administrator as of 12/1, or maybe beforehand, but yeah, it's to replace the administrator.
Would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, we're kind of in the vote. I'm sorry.
No.
Mr. Olthoff. Mr. Hess.
I feel I have some integrity, but I will vote aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Nay.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
No.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Nay.
Mr. Kinzinger. Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries.
21-4.
21-4. Alrighty, moving on. We have no certificates of recognition. This month, we've asked them to wait until next month. So the minutes of the last meeting, I need a motion to approve. Mr. Featherling, second, Mr. Excuse me, Eckhoff. Wow. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under department reports.
Claims Committee.
Or Claims Committee, why don't we do that one first?
Mr. Chairman and members of the County Board, your Committee on County Claims would beg leave to report they have examined the following claims presented and recommend payment. The clerk is hereby authorized and directed to issue orders to the several claimants payable out of the funds as follows. General Fund, $2,082,837.59. All other funds, $5,530,385.54. Total for the month of July 2019, $7,613,223.13. The Highway Fund, $1,109,322.32. All other funds, $756,460.81. Total for the month of July 2019, $1,865,783.13.
Need a motion to approve, please. Mr. Legess, second, Mr. Smith. That's a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mr. Olthoff. Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Pope. Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger. Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Smith. Mr. Swanson. Mr. Featherling. Mr. Dunhill. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Alrighty. Under department reports, please.
County Treasurer's Monthly Report for July 2019, total cash and investments, $21,567,280.52. Total checking accounts and cash, total of $14,751,414.24. General fund deficit balance of $1,407,254.02. County Collector's Report for July 2019, total cash and bank and investments, $21,567,280.52. Coroner's Monthly Report for July 2019, total calls 94, coroner's cases 19, autopsies 8, toxicology 8, outside autopsies 1, donations 3, x-rays 2, cremations 55. Total fees of $4,349.94. Circuit Clerk Cash Book for July 2019, total dispersed $361,666.83. Recorder's Monthly Report for July 2019, disbursement fees paid to the County Treasurer, $132,830.06. County Clerk's Monthly Report for July 2019, total fees $23,860.53. Animal Control Monthly Report for July 2019, total fees $21,370. In the IPTIP Building Fund, $555.99. Total animals handled 70. The Monthly Division Report for July 2019, total permits 108. Total fees of $21,310, total extra fees of $3,041, for a total of $24,351. The monthly resolution list, total to the county, $22,794.61.
Thank you, sir. Motion to combine and accept the reports. Mr. Olthoff, second. Mr. Byrne. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Yes, sir.
For the purpose of the record, letting you know that it's 9 to 11 is what I have on my sheet for the job, so I have to return to the job, so asking to be excused. Thanks.
Don't have to ask my permission, but thank you.
You're right. No, but
And his integrity.
Yeah, we'll work on our integrity while you're going. Under committee presentations and resolutions, under consent agenda, anything to come off the consent agenda? Is there anything on consent that you would like to speak to separately than the other business? Give you a second.
One.
Yes, sir.
The ZBA 1905.
Special use?
Yeah, I think so. There needs to be a change, or I don't know how you do your pen and ink things, but.
Scrivener error.
Pardon?
Scrivener error.
Okay.
Scrivener error.
Yeah, I'm just reading through it. I didn't realize that we were establishing a slaughterhouse versus a kennel.
We use I think they use the slaughterhouse template. Yeah, it is a kennel. Yeah. Which you don't want to mix those two up. Believe
not
me,
after
after what we just went through, no.
So, whatever point we need to change that.
Yeah, we'll get it changed. It is a kennel. That's what was approved in committee. So the resolution will be adjusted accordingly.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So anything else on consent? Then a motion to combine and approve would be in order. We'll go with Mr. Swanson's, second by Mr. Eckhoff. we have to read these into the record. They have to make it official, so. You need a drink before you start? Yeah.
The reappointment of Jude Pommier to the Baker Creek Drainage District. The reappointment of Keith W. Yonka to the Baker Creek Drainage District. The reappointment of Dennis Schaefer to the Baker Creek Drainage District. The reappointment of Paul DeGroot to the Clausen Park Drainage District. Reappointment of Ronald Blanchett to the Exline Creek Drainage District. Reappointment of Tom DeYoung to the Little Beaver Special Drainage District Number 1. The reappointment of John Supernaw to the Minnie Creek Drainage District. Reappointment of Elwood Line to the Moments and Yellowhead Drainage District Number 1. Reappointment of Jason O'Connor to the Raymond Drainage District. The reappointment of Gerald L. Wagner to the Raymond Drainage District. The reappointment of Roger Keir to the Rockville Drainage District Number 1. The reappointment of Stephen Engelking to the Yellowhead and Washington Units Drainage District Number 2. The reappointment of Leroy Bauer to the McGilvray Special Drainage District. The reappointment of John P. Grecius to the Grinnell Special Drainage District. The reappointment of Paul Marcotte to the Spring Creek Drainage District. The reappointment of Mark P. O'Connor to the Joe Bennis Drainage District. The reappointment of David Cole to the Canavan Drainage District. The reappointment of Tinker Parker to the Animal Welfare Advisory Committee. The reappointment of Carol Weber to the Animal Welfare Advisory Committee. The reappointment of Dr. Diane Fedro to the Animal Welfare Advisory Committee. The reappointment of Dawn Tutt to the Animal Welfare Advisory Committee. The reappointment of Christy Slaby to the Animal Welfare Advisory Committee. The reappointment of Jamie Jamnick to the Animal Welfare Advisory Committee. Declaration of Highway Department equipment as surplus property. ZBA case 1905, special use permit 28, kennel in the A1 Agriculture District, section 16, Norton Township. ZBA case 1909, variance to section 121-99, side yard setback in the A1 Agriculture District, section 32, Salina Township. An ordinance establishing a county cannabis retailer's occupation tax in the county of Kankakee, Illinois.
Thank you. Just as a note, I would let people know that in building and grounds, we're going to take this up, but we did find a way to use a surplus vehicle in the sheriff's department so we don't have to order one of the pickups. We'll still approve it here, but we'll have to go through committee to have that transfer approved. So while this may be surplus here, we may be saving buying a new vehicle by what we're talking about here. So I have a motion and a second. That's a roll call, please.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Lejess.
Aye.
Mr. Olthoff.
Aye.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger. Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Ms. Haas. Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Under PZA, if we could read that title into the record.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois regarding the authority for the County Board Chairman to sign an agreement between Kankakee County Historic Preservation Commission and WJE Associates Incorporated, consultant for the Kankakee County's intensive level historic and architectural survey of Moments Township under the 2019 CLG grant.
Motion to approve on this, and then we can get any questions. Mr. Byrne, second, Mr. Lejess. Basically, the county's any funds would be in-kind services, so there is no expenditure of funds, but we still have to vote on it because it's part of it. So that'll be a roll call vote unless there's any questions. Please and thanks.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Lejess.
Aye.
Mr. Olthoff.
Aye.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Under finance, this is the vehicle issue or resolution. Could you read that, just the title, please?
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois regarding leasing purchase of county vehicles and purchase of related equipment by the Sheriff's Department.
So first, a motion to approve that, and then Mr. Hess, second, Mr. Peyton, as mentioned, we may be able to reduce that purchase by one. We're gonna talk to all parties concerned. The committee will approve the transfer, hopefully at Building and Grounds. So, but we'll adopt it as it is in case we're not able to do that. So. Roll call vote?
Mr. Washington. Aye. Mr. Lejas. Aye. Mr. Olthoff. Aye. Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen. Aye. Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Peyton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson. Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye, motion carries. Next item, could we title on that one too, please?
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, regarding authorizing the county board chairman to sign a service agreement with Hitchcock Design Group and payment from Kankakee River Valley Enterprise Zone funds.
I need a motion on this one as well. Mr. Fairfield, a second. Ms. Parker, go on that one. Basically, this is just pass-through. This is not our money. This is enterprise zone money that was, we take fees from somebody wanting to build in the enterprise zone, so it's set aside. The mayors all are part of the commission that oversees that, and it was voted by that commission to expend the funds. We just keep it in our accounts. So if there's any questions on that? I'm sorry? It was 11, I think, wasn't it? 11.9. Yeah. It's 11.9, and then they were talking about a website, but now they're not talking about a website. So I think the total we approved was, Ben? 30,000. It was 30,000 of those funds total. But if they don't do the website or do something different, then that's where we're at. So we have to go back and talk to them again if that doesn't happen, because we authorized the projects that they did. And if that changes, then this is the one I know that's going forward, is the lighting study. So I guess that's a roll call vote.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Lejas. Mr. Olthoff.
Aye.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Peyton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye, motion carries. Alrighty, and then the final item of business before old business is credit cards.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, regarding authorizing the county board chairman to sign an agreement with First American Bank as the county's credit card vendor.
So I need a motion to approve that. Mr. Dunhill, second. Ms. Dunbar. We, Finance Committee saw the comparison. Zeros, I believe, is that in the packet, the comparison? It is in there, so you see it is a much better deal. Finance was unanimous on this, I believe, so that wouldn't change until 12/1. We're gonna have that cutoff date. Part of this was accepting the fact that we are gonna have that $99 enrollment fee that we're gonna have to pay to make sure that you understand that's part of this authorization as well. So I just don't wanna see that claim get hung up for whatever reason. So we do have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Roll call vote.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Lejas.
Aye.
Mr. Olthoff. Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk. Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Peyton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye, motion carries. Was that? Old business, one opening on the BM Lewis Drainage District, one on the Mantino Number 9 District, one on Gar Creek Drainage, one resident opening on Kankakee County Housing Authority Board, one opening on the Ethics Commission, one opening on the Regional Planning Commission. Excuse me, two. Thank you, sir. Sounds like you're volunteering. One opening on the Kankakee, I know better. One opening on the Kankakee County Historic Preservation Commission for an architect, 2 openings on the Animal Welfare Advisory Committee. We do have those applications in-house, but if somebody else wants to submit those, that's fine. We're waiting on the board members who are currently there, or commission members, to decide if they're gonna re-up, if you will. So, any new business today? Yes, Ms. Haas.
Old business?
Oh,
In the back, old business.
old business, Bones? I'm sorry, Mr. Hess.
Thank you, and this is really old. I'd like to wish a happy anniversary to Mr. Legess. Today is his 29th anniversary of being put onto the county board.
Wow, congratulations.
That's old.
That's old business. Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. Any new business? Yes, Mrs. Haas, and you are, I'm sorry, number 9, number 8, number 9.
6 or 9, whichever way you look at it.
We'll
No,
get
I
to
just
it.
wanted to mention that September Suicide Awareness Month, and today is actually World Suicide Prevention Day. So unfortunately in our county, we've had a rise in deaths by suicide. So it's important to talk about, it's important to educate ourselves about that. September 11th is the Out of the Darkness Suicide Awareness Walk, which helps fund education in our community. And we'll be doing some mental health first aid classes between now and the end of the year to help promote education and awareness in our community. So certainly look at our Facebook page for those training dates moving forward.
No, thank you for that, and thanks for all the work that you and Helen Wheeler Center and the staff do. It's great work. Any other new business? Motion to adjourn, Mr. Legess. Second, Mr. Hess. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, have a good day.